Hey Eagles fans, this is Mike Kaye from NJ Advanced Media, and welcome to the No Huddle Show podcast, where we discuss anything and everything Philadelphia Eagles. You can read our content on NJ.com/Eagles, bookmark that, and you can subscribe to our exclusive Eagles Insider Tech service, where we'll break news, give you insider observations, and provide in-depth analysis. Through Eagles Extra, you can send questions and comments directly to us, and we'll respond to your phone. We also do weekly Friday exclusive Q&A sessions where you can ask as many questions as you want. With me today, as always, is my fellow Eagles beat reporter, Chris Franklin. Today, we're going to discuss the Eagles' in-house free agents, the Eagles' logical free agent targets, and what to do with Zach Ertz, plus much more. Chris, how are you doing today?
Not bad at all, thanks. Happy Legal Tampering Day. It's recording this on a Monday, so it's first day. Teams are starting to reach out to free agents, and it feels like Howie Roseman's basically like in a Walmart or Target with this long grocery list, and he's looking to go and fill the cart, and he doesn't have that much money left on his card. So, how you doing, man?
Well, it's kind of like, when you're buying like vegetables at Walmart and they have like the chopped up celery, which is like probably $1.20 more than like the regular celery stock because there was effort put into it. And so you basically, at this point, typically they would go for the cut up celery because they have the money to bank on it, but they're trying to bargain hunt. So they're just going to go with the stock and put in the work themselves. They're going to have to develop that celery, if you get what I'm saying.
That. Bravo, I like that.
It just came to my mind. I was going to go with like a shredded lettuce analogy, but I thought the celery was better. By the way, celery, like if we're talking about celery, just like eating celery on its own, you definitely want that really green celery. Like that's like a running joke in our family now. My father-in-law always buys, like whenever I visit them, buys like the greenest celery. You can get them at like Trader Joe's or like any, fresh market or whatever. I can't stand the neon, like, like the crappy celery that you get with your wings sometimes.
Yeah.
And they're like really light and they're flimsy and they have no flavor. Like I'm a big celery guy. Like I love vegetables. I grew up just like eating vegetables like I was a rabbit. So it's like right now, Howie Roseman needs to look for the greenest of the celery stalks and not the cut up celery, if that makes sense. Also, by the way, the thing that sucks about the chopped up celery is they put it in water so that it can maintain, right? But let's say, somebody who bags the celery, if you bag it wrong yourself in the self-checkout line or the cashier bags it wrong, that water can come out and you've got a water park in the backseat of your car or your trunk, and it's just not a fun experience. Anyway.
Yeah, I've been there.
Anyway, so free agency is starting. Zach Ertz is still here. There was a report by Tom Pelissero on Sunday that Zach was getting kind of frustrated with being, kind of strung along here. He'd like a fresh start, which is understandable given that the Eagles are not going to match his contract extension demands. It seems like both sides are going in a different direction. And look, the Eagles don't want to give Zach Ertz away. He's a foundational player for this team over the last 8 years. A franchise great, a guy who's going to come back and probably retire as an Eagle. But the reality of the situation is he's coming off his worst season of his career. He's set to make $8.5 million in the last year of his deal. He wants a contract extension. None of this is really optimal for a trade. So they're probably not receiving the offers that they'd like. I've been told, Pelissero reported a third or a fourth round pick. I've been told similar. I think they can get this done for a fifth round pick inevitably, or a conditional, or potentially a compensatory fourth round pick. But I think this will get done. That's my opinion. So what do you think the Eagles should do?
I do think it is time for him to move on. Unfortunately, I always thought that he should have been an Eagle for life, but given that the situations that's going on through this entire year with the discussion they had, training camp discussion, argument, whatever they had before the training camp, and seeing that he's on the back end of his career, and his team right now doesn't necessarily need two high caliber tight ends on his team right now. So I'd probably say it's best to move him. The conditions aren't optimal. I think a lot of teams probably would be waiting to see if he gets released, but the Eagles said that they as you said as well too, they don't want to release him. So if they can get something that's an incentive laden, a compensatory deal with a lot of incentives in there, saying he plays a certain amount of snaps or a certain amount of catches, triggers a fourth that in that way or a third, then go for it. But I think a lot of GMs see the situation, what's going on with Ertz, and they're saying, and they know the Eagles salary cap, and they're going, you guys can't hold on to it. So I think a lot of teams are waiting them out, and I wouldn't blame them for doing so. But I think the time for him is unfortunately is gone.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think a fresh start could help him. I think going to a team like the Chargers or the Packers or even the Colts and re-upping with Carson Wentz, those are good situations for him. He can kind of, rehab his value and potentially find a spot where he can be another 60 catch, 700 to 800 yard player again, and then hit free agency and maybe cash in on the final 3 or 4 years of his career. Obviously his legacy here is important. He caught the game-winning touchdown pass in the Super Bowl. He set the NFL record for catches in the season the next year. He was a 3-time Pro Bowler, homegrown, all that good stuff. Actually, what's interesting, with Eric Fisher being cut by the Chiefs, as of now, Lane Johnson and Zach Ertz are the only players in the top 35 picks from the 2013 NFL draft that are still on their original teams. Now, you could say it's been 8 seasons, it's been a long time, but that's still an impressive mark when you consider the Eagles' draft history, especially recently. So Chip Kelly gets some credit there. But moving on from that, the Eagles are still over the cap as we record this at 11:30 on a Monday. With Brandon Brooks agreed to restructure his contract late Friday, I believe, which brought them down to around $11 million over the cap. They can get under the cap simply by just restructuring Fletcher Cox's contract. That hasn't happened yet. They could save another $9.5 million by extending Brandon Graham's contract, which I think could happen. Whether it happens before the new league year or not. If they just restructure his contract, they'll save about $8.9 million. So it's kind of one of those things where they just have to figure out where they're putting the money with him. They can save $7.2 million by extending Derek Barnett's 5th-year option. They can also save $10 million by cutting or trading him. I don't think either one of those situations is going to happen. I think it's more likely he either plays on his 5th-year option or he signs an extension. And then they can save $4.2 million by cutting Marquise Goodwin. They can save about $2.8 million by restructuring him. And obviously, we just talked about Zach Ertz getting traded. They can save $4.95 million by trading him. However, if they are going to trade him, they still need to get under the cap with other moves because technically he has to be on the roster to start the new league year before he's traded. So those are kind of all the possibilities to get under the cap. I think they're going to open up significant cap space by doing stuff with Barnett, Graham, and Cox. So that leads us to free agency. They're going to be shopping on a budget. They have 12 internal unrestricted free agents. You can add 2 more to that group because I've been told that they will not issue a restricted tender to punter Cam Johnston. They're definitely not going to give a restricted tender to Josh Perkins. So let's look at that list. Chris, do you want to read it off real quick?
Sure. You have, beginning with everybody's favorite linebacker, Nate Gary. You have Duke Riley, safety Jalen Mills, cornerback Cravon LeBlanc, cornerback Nickel Roby-Coleman, safety Rudy Ford, guard Jason Peters, which we pretty much know that he's not going to be back, tight end Richard Rodgers, running back Corey Clement, defensive tackle Hassan Ridgeway, defensive end Vinnie Curry, quarterback Nate Sudfeld, as you mentioned, Cameron Johnston, and also tight end Josh Perkins.
So that's a long list. I think we can rule off returns for Nathan Gary. Nathan Gary's gone. He will not be re-signing here. I can almost guarantee that. Jason Peters, like you said, it seems like all signs are pointing to him moving on. I don't think Corey Clement's back because of the new staff. Vinny Curry, I think, has a possibility, but there's literally no way that happens before the draft. I think Perkins is gone. Cam Johnson's about a 50-50 shot. So let's go through all these guys and pick some landing spots for them. I'll start with Nathan Gary. I'm going to say the Detroit Lions. Nathan Gary, before he was a defensive starter, he was a huge standout on special teams. I think that's where his career is basically going to end up moving forward. Dave Phipps in Detroit likes him. I'm going to go with that. So where do you think Duke Riley would be a good fit? You can say the Eagles too, by the way.
Yeah, I think that's who I think is good. I think he comes back on like a league minimum deal. I think he comes back. I think he contributes still on special teams. I don't think they'll rely as heavily as they did as a starter. I think when you look at this linebacker core, you see a guy like you got Singleton and you're going to have possibly Edwards going at, and I think they get another guy coming back in the draft as well too. So I don't think they'll rely heavily on him, but I think he would come back to the Eagles, especially as be a special teams contributor.
So to add to that, I've heard the Duke's probably going to actually have a better market than a lot of people expect, just from a special team standpoint. Like, I think the league looks at him as a special teams ace. That said, I think he would prefer to be back here. That's my impression, just based on what I'm hearing around the league. So I'll go with Jalen Mills. I think Mills should want out of here. I think, with Jim Schwartz gone, with Tim Houck gone, it's a fresh start for everybody. I think he'd be a really good fit for the San Francisco 49ers, who are going to have a lot of turnaround in their secondary. He'd be a cheap replacement either at corner or safety. They're going to play a lot of zone. Corey Undlin is there as the DB coach who loves Jalen Mills. That's where I've got him headed. So let's go to Crevon LeBlanc. What do you got?
See, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I think Crevon LeBlanc could be an Eagle, come back to the Eagles on a low deal as well too, because when you look at the depth they have at cornerback right now, they're very thin. And I think given that what he's given so far, especially being like slot and everything else, I think can be a good option to go ahead and cover, especially when you're going to have to see a lot of the receivers with the Cowboys and the Giants are going to get better at wide receiver as well too. So I think LeBlanc comes back for another 1 year deal.
Well, if he's going to come back, I'm going to send Nickel Roby-Coleman to the Jets, where former Eagles DBs coach Marquand Manuel currently is. I think he fits what they want to do from a zone perspective. They just cut Brian Poole, I believe, so he would fit in well at nickel. So Rudy Ford, where you got him going?
I got him going back with Dave Phipp at Detroit. I think Phipp sees his value in there. I think he's another one of those guys that's another good cover guy, and who can contribute once in a while to be a depth guy in a defensive backfield. So I have him going up north to Detroit.
So Jason Peters, I got him going to the Colts. I think that's basically his only landing spot. Given that, Frank Reich, Carson Wentz, Press Taylor, Mike Rowe, literally everyone has connection to Jason Peters there. It seems like the right move. He's saying all the right things about Carson Wentz. I think that's inevitably where he ends up if he does end up somewhere. So Richard Rodgers, where do you have him going? Broken record.
I'm torn between either Atlanta or Green Bay, especially
Atlanta, where the players play.
Yeah, have fun. Keep him away from Magic City, he'll be good. But when you look at especially Jason Cruz, the old tight end coach going down Atlanta, I think that'd be a good place for him. But I think him reuniting with Aaron Rodgers, especially given he'd be a good backup to Tanyan. I really think he'd be a good depth guy at tight end, and I wouldn't be surprised if he went back up to Green Bay.
No, I like that, actually. I never thought of that. So Corey Clement, the pride of New Jersey, man, this is one of those things. He had such a bright future after that rookie year, and it just doesn't seem like anything was right with him offensively since Carson Wentz screwed up a handoff and he hurt himself in 2018. Detroit? Question mark? Deuce Staley is there, so sure. Whatever. Hassan Ridgeway.
I can see him going to a team like the Carolina Panthers. Defensive line, the way that the defensive line, a little technique as well too. I think he can go ahead and get provide some pressure up the middle, and he'll be a good fit for that defense.
Vincent Curry. I see him going to the Jets. Joe Douglas connection. They're going to change their defensive scheme probably to a 3-4 or a 4-3 under. Curry has the versatility to play a 5 technique. He can play a 4 technique. He can also play 9. He's the type of veteran that you kind of want in that building. Obviously, D'Amico Ryans, who got promoted to defensive coordinator in San Francisco, has a history with him. So Saleh has a history. They have a connection there. I think that'd be a really great fit for him, especially because he can stay in New Jersey. So Nathaniel Sudfeld, who you got?
I put the caveat is if the Bears do not acquire Deshaun Watson or Russell Wilson, I think Sudfeld will go land in Chicago, DiFilippo there, and he'll go ahead and be able. He'll. I think he's going to try to find a landing spot to be a starter, but I think there's no spot for him. And I don't think he's a starting caliber.
No one thinks he's a starter, Chris. No one.
Come on, they were pushing him, thinking he can go ahead and he can fill in here.
Oh, give me a break. Give me a break.
But yeah, I think he go ahead and be in the mix to be one of the three quarterbacks over there in Chicago.
So Cam Johnson's an interesting one. I'll give you an interesting location for him, Buffalo. Their punter is also a restricted free agent as of Monday morning. He hasn't been tendered either. Cam's got a really strong leg, and you need that in those windy, rainy, snowy conditions. I think he's the perfect cold weather punter. And look, the Bills are a team that's on the up and up. So I think that's all the more reason to head there if he is not re-signed by the Eagles. So the last one, Josh Perkins. This is kind of like Corey Clement, but go for it.
I could see him re-sign with the Eagles if they are not able to re-sign Richard Rodgers. And I think it's going to happen. They're going to need a guy like him, another true veteran. I know Goddard's been here for a little bit as well, too, but also with his team's affinity to try to go ahead and get these wide receivers, convert them to tight ends. I think you need another true tight end on this roster. So I think he sticks around, but like another guy with a cheap 1-year deal.
So let's move over to outside free agency. We don't know how much cap space the Eagles are going to have, but we wanted to get this podcast up this week to kind of preview everything that's going on on Monday afternoon. I mean, this could be dated by, Wednesday, which if something big happens, obviously Chris and I will have an emergency podcast. We'll probably have a recap later on this week, maybe on Friday. But I wrote a story and a list about the 20 realistic free agent targets for the Eagles on the free agent market. Now, I've got I separated them in 4 categories: clear upgrades, familiar faces, logical veteran additions, and then high upside guys. And so let's go through this list. I gave you a couple of minutes to kind of look it over. Obviously, you read it because it's wonderful and you support me. But
we all know that. Come on now.
What stood out to you about the list? Who are 3 guys that you think make a lot of sense on this list?
Well, the first one was Corey Davis. I mean, the former Tennessee Titans wide receiver. I liked him a lot coming out of Western Michigan. I thought he was a really big guy. He's able to go ahead and move and had enough speed to go and do it. And, I know he's had his own share of injury stuff, and he didn't become the guy that the Titans imagined he would be. But I think especially given that the Eagles don't have that many bigger receivers on this roster right now, I think he'd be a good upgrade. I think he can go ahead and be a reliable guy, especially running those intermediate routes as well too. And then if you need the occasional jump ball, I think he could be somebody that can do that. So I really like him. Marlon Mack. See, I'm on the fence with. I think I see a lot of good things with what he can do. I know he's been hurt a lot, but I've seen a lot of good stuff. I mean, especially coming out of South Florida, I thought he was going to be great. Another guy I thought he was great as well too. And I wouldn't be surprised if more teams actually try to get in on him. But if the Eagles are able to bring him into the fold, I think he and Miles Sanders will be a nice 1-2 punch. Especially, I think he could be a good back out of the backfield catching the ball as well too. And he can go ahead. And I think he'll be able to go ahead and run that zone, run a lot of zone plays as well. The zone running scheme. I think he's a good fit for that. So he's another guy I wouldn't mind seeing it. And then finally, I'll bypass what you had, Matt Barkley, because I cannot. I do not want to see that ever, 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 ever ever again. But James Shaughnessy, I thought he was a good guy, I think, as well, too, especially mentioned beforehand with his team's need at tight end right now. And if they don't take Kyle Pitts, who I'm wondering if Daniel Jeremiah is extremely friends with, or I wish somebody talked to me like the way Daniel Jeremiah talked about Kyle Pitts, but that's a whole other story. But James O'Shaughnessy, I think he's another veteran guy that can come in and be a guy who can go ahead and act as another safety blanket for Jalen Hurts across the middle, running. He'll get you like the first down, get you like you can. I wouldn't expect big things from him, but he's a nice, solid veteran tight end. I mean, who do you got?
So I'm going to go with John Johnson. If I'm spending money on a defensive player, he's the guy that I would want. He's perfect for the split safety look that we expect them to run. It's just like an absolute ball hawk. Plays everywhere. He's one of the better strong safeties in the league. Can play free safety with Roddy McLeod coming off an ACL injury. He might not play the first 6 games of the season. Then you look at someone like Kayvon Wallace, who while he flashed a little bit, we don't know if he's ready to start either. So John Johnson's the guy that I would pay very, very well. Mike Davis is another guy who I think is the perfect Sheldon Brown to Darius Slay's Lito Shepherd. Feisty cornerback, has a lot of experience as a zone corner, good size. I believe he's 6'2", 198. I like him a lot. And then another like under the radar guy who has a connection to the staff is Josh Reynolds. If the Eagles really want to upgrade at wide receiver but don't want to pay a lot, Josh Reynolds is such a high upside guy. Maybe you sign him to a 1-year, $5 million contract, but he's a guy who's gotten a lot of playing experience at multiple positions with the Rams. He's got a background with Aaron Moorhead from their Texas A&M days. He can play the X receiver position. He can play the slot position. He'd be an upgrade at either, in my opinion. He's kind of got that versatility that Travis Fulgham has. You can line one guy up in the slot to upgrade over Greg Ward. You can line another guy up at the X spot. It gives you a little bit more free range with the 6th overall pick. I think it makes a lot of sense. So some other names on this list that might kind of escape you. Samaje Perine, who, in my opinion, is like the perfect special teams /backup running back to add to this group. He played under Jamal Singleton last year in Cincinnati. Really good special teams player, but could also be a short yardage back. Nicholas Murrow with the Raiders. He's been a starter at will for a little bit. I think he would be a natural upgrade. He's only 25. He still has a lot of room to grow, but he could be one of those veterans to team with Alex Singleton and whoever else you want to put at linebacker. I think they really need to look into a veteran swing tackle. Julian Davenport is a guy who's played in multiple blocking schemes. Was part of that famous trade between the Dolphins and the Texans that sent Laramie Tunsil to Houston. He's also a Paulsboro native, so it's kind of a homecoming. Alex Anzalone, who is from the Philly-ish area, could make sense at linebacker. And then you've got someone like David Moore, who I feel is like really under the radar for what he's been able to do with Seattle. Good size, 6 foot, 215. He can play the X role, he can play in the slot. He's a guy who I think is going to sign a 1-year deal somewhere and kind of explode and be one of those guys that kind of comes out of nowhere as a veteran free agent. I also like DeMarcus Walker, Jacksonville native, who I covered in high school. He reminds me a lot of Darren Howard in that he's like an undersized defensive tackle who can also play defensive end. You can move him around. He's a rotational piece. He can give you depth at both positions. Kind of an upgrade, not an upgrade, but like a youth replacement for Vinny Curry. So let's get into our final thoughts because we're 25 minutes in. You know what? A lot of people have probably been seeing you tweet about the Sixers quite a bit. Tell people about what you're doing with the Sixers right now.
Well, what I'm doing right now, I'm still going to be on the Eagles beat, but one thing I'm doing is for the rest of the season, I'll be covering the Sixers right now. They've got a lot of interesting stories going on. I mean, it's kind of interesting. First 2 games into go ahead and covering them, all of a sudden you got Joel Embiid hurt again, so that was a little took a turn for worse. But one thing I hope we can do is provide some feature stories. It won't be your normal transactional day-to-day stuff. Just go ahead and evaluating the rosters and trying to take a little deeper dive into this team that currently is the top seed right now in the Eastern Conference and has a legitimate shot at making the finals. So it's going to be very interesting. I look forward to taking that task, and it's going to be a nice challenge and getting used to everything. But it's going to be I'm looking forward to going and share those stories, man. It's interesting. It's going to be fun.
Make sure you check out that Chris's coverage of the Sixers in the sports section of NJ.com. Remember, you can also sign up for Eagles Extra 2 weeks free. We do an exclusive Q&A. You're not going to want to miss this Friday's Q&A once the ball gets rolling on free agency. Again, you can sign up for 2 weeks free. Figure out if you like it or not. We've gotten a lot of people joining over the last month since we started this exclusive Q&A service. Remember, you can send us questions even when we're not doing the mailbags. You'll get breaking news updates sent straight to your phone. We're having a lot of fun with this service, and we hope you join us. Again, 2 weeks free. You can sign up at NJ.com/text. That's NJ.com/text. It's also, there's links in all of our articles as well. And remember, download the No Huddle Show podcast and subscribe to us. Give us 5-star ratings. We appreciate them. Give us your feedback. We love seeing what you guys have to write about us, even the critical stuff. And you can download the No Huddle Show podcast wherever podcasts are available. For Chris, I'm Mike. We'll talk to you very soon.